to meet electronically. On February 2nd, 2021, public notice of this meeting was posted on the town website and on the bulletin board of the town offices at 10 Front Street. As provided in that public notice, the public may access this meeting online and via telephone. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during the meeting and who that person is. This is required under the right to know law. So I will start with Elliot Berkowitz.
Elliot Berkowitz, home alone.
Very good. Matt Carboni.
Matt Carboni, in the room by myself, but my wife is in the building.
Very good. Darius Thompson.
I'm in the barn by myself. No one else is here.
Emily Heath.
Here, and I'm in the room alone.
Okay, very good. And I know Alexis was not going to be here. She's in a meeting. She may join us later, but Matt is going to take minutes in her place until she arrives. Is Harry King there? I didn't see Harry. And Katie Adams, are you here? I didn't see Katie on my list. So again, maybe they'll be joining. Like, we do have a quorum. And for what it's worth, if we ever do not have a quorum, in case people aren't aware, that just means we can't take any votes. Doesn't mean we can't meet. It just means that we wouldn't have enough people to vote on anything in particular. So I really never got a chance to mention that early on. But we do have quorum, so we're fine. I also, Molly Cowan, are you there?
I'm here in the room by myself.
Great, thank you. And Daryl Brown?
I'm here alone as well.
Very good, thank you. And we do, as you know, and Chief Poulin?
I am here in my office alone.
Very good. And as you know, we have others. Actually, I think Sergeant West is also here.
Yes, I'm here in the room of my own.
Very good, thank you. And as we mentioned before, we have other stakeholders that as they speak to us, if they do want to participate, we will ask them at that time if they are, who's in the room with them, if anybody. So on that note, as I bring the meeting to order, first order of business would be the approval of the minutes from our last meeting. Did anyone have any edits, changes, corrections in the minutes of the meeting of January 26th? I'll look for any. I don't see any. No hands raised. I would look for a motion then to approve the minutes of the meeting of January 26th.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And all those in favor, we'll do that by roll call vote. And I see Katie has joined us. Hi, Katie. Thank you. Okay. All right. I'm just going to call the roll on the approval of the minutes. Elliot Berkowitz.
Yes.
Matt Carboni.
Yes.
Katie Adams.
Yes.
Emily Heath.
Aye.
Darius Thompson.
Yes.
Oh, is Tanisha Johnson here? I'm sorry, Miss Tanisha. I did not see her. Okay. Make a note of that. All right. Okay. And the chair says aye, so the minutes are approved as written. Very good. Next order, we have old business. I want to just give the chief a moment to speak just about the survey that we are getting responses. We don't want to get into the big detail, but I certainly want the chief to let us know how that's going, just in terms of numbers.
So to date, we have over 130 responses, which is really great, seeing as it was just kicked off, last week. I see that some of you are also sharing it on different platforms. That's great as well. One area that we're kind of missing the boat right now is 25 and under. So I think that's going to be, hitting the SAU and the schools and trying to get our younger folks to respond. So we could use all your help with that.
So that's a great return. And I know someone, I don't put anybody on the spot, but someone, I will, Katie, not to put you on the spot, but you had mentioned maybe you were going to reach out to David Ryan of the SAU. And if anyone has any connection with the actual high school, talking to the principal, I'm not bashful of doing that. I just don't know if there's someone who has more of a relationship with any of the principals of the high school in particular. I know I think to some degree we have Phillips Exeter Academy covered. I know Alexis was going to do that, or Matt. But has anyone got a particular connection to the high school?
I did email David Ryan, and I am waiting to hear back.
Okay, great. Awesome. Okay. Then we'll leave that with you then. That's awesome. But yeah, that's an important demographic for us to get. So that would be great. Great if we could get more of that. And just for what it's worth, I was at deliberative session, even though that was not a hugely attended event. I did go on Saturday and got the QR code out as best I could. And I also thought I would check with Andy Kohler to see if she would allow us to put maybe make a poster as Bob Galacki had suggested, and maybe post that in the town clerk lobby area where there's a lot of people. And I have reached out to the Chamber of Commerce, the president there, to see what we can do if there's anything in the businesses in that realm. So anything anyone thinks of, feel free. I mean, you don't have to report back to me. I'm just happy if we can get as much information out there, but just keep me posted as to where you're going, just so we don't, I just didn't want people tripping over people and having the same companies and organizations being contacted by the same people, or by different people. So that would be the only reason. Otherwise, go forth, send it to your neighbors. That's what I did. I sent a group email to all my neighbors, friends, anyone I've ever known. So appreciate all that. Okay, great. Anyone else have anything on that? I don't see anybody. Okay. So our premier item today is a discussion and action item is to talk about goal number 2, which is to provide effective police services. And I'll go back to the chief so he can introduce Sergeant West and also Dennis Walker, and they can give us some insight on the One Mind program.
Thank you. So goal number 2 touches on a variety of things: retention, hiring, recruitment, and deployment of resources. We're starting off with deployment of resources, more specifically our response to the mental health crisis. It's something that Exeter is not immune to, and it affects everybody. And what you're going to hear today is you're going to hear from Sergeant Devin West about our statistics and what we've done to kind of better equip our officers in responding to this. For national debate, is whether police should be responding to these type of calls. Right now, we are in Exeter, and as long as we're going to make sure that our officers are have the best tools available to them and are equipped to handle these situations without the immediate use of force that we're seeing across the nation and things like that. So that's why we found it's very important to equip all of our staff, the dispatchers, officers, with this kind of training. Sergeant Devin West came to us in 2014. He has prior experience as a Capitol Police officer as well. And this was something he really wanted to take hold of and help the department be the best that we can be. And he can speak more to that as well. After Sergeant West, we have Director Dennis Walker. He's the Emergency Services Director with Seacoast Mental Health. And he can also speak to our relationship, what we've done, what we want to do in the future, and actually also what is lacking as far as a police response to these type of calls, as far as what's available to us. It's important for you to hear that we don't have, a clinician 24/7 that can come with us to these calls. And often the calls come in as violent calls, and it is going to be the police that go. The clinicians will not go to a violent call. So that's kind of how we're kind of stuck with that piece, and how we're going to maneuver and get these people that are in a crisis the best help that they can get. So with that, I'll introduce Sergeant Devin West.
My internet connection keeps shading in and out, so hopefully, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, it keeps bumping me off. I don't know. I have an old house and the router doesn't work the best. Yeah, so basically we decided to become One Mind certified so we could get all the mental health training that we needed. And it actually helped us because it gives you a time frame of 12 to 36 months to get it done. So it kind of puts you under the gun to get it done. to get that certification. So it got us to get it done quicker than probably we normally would have done. So I can go over the one mind campaign is basically just
I think we have a technical difficulty. Oops.
He's
having internet connection issues. He could try the meeting, which is on the agenda
Right.
without video, but
I mean, that's certainly up to him. That might make it easier. Because unless he has something physical to show us, it's probably more we hear him. But that's up to you, Sergeant West. Would it be easier for you to call in and rather than on the computer?
you're muted.
Yeah, he's muted.
it just keeps saying that my internet connection unstable, even though I have full bars. I don't know what's going on.
Would it be easier for you to call us? Do you want to call on the phone?
Good. We could try it one more time, and then if I get kicked off again, what's the number?
The number is it 646-558-8656. And then there's a webinar number that
you because you'll also have to have the webinar ID and a bunch of other information.
right, the webinar number, I can give you that as well.
Yeah.
I can email it to you.
Oh, okay. Either way, if that's quicker, go ahead.
Can you email it to my personal? Because I don't have my work email on my home computer. I think I'm good now. Can you guys all hear me and see me?
Yes,
I can
yeah.
see everybody now.
Certainly.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
But I don't know. So basically, with the One Mind, it gives us a 12 to 36 month time frame to get everything done. Those everything's is collaboration with mental health professionals, which we did with Seacoast, with Dennis Walker. So now we're collaborated with them, so we can use them with a bunch of different. They have a bunch of different resources we can use. We had to have 20% of our department get crisis intervention team trained, which is basically mental health training to for police officers, so we can deal with mental health crisis, and we're better trained to do that. It's a 40-hour week-long course, which it's presentation, scenarios, role playing, all kinds of stuff. It's a week-long commitment. So 20% of our officers are trained in crisis intervention training, and 100% of everybody at the PD is trained in mental health first aid, which is the first step. Mental health first aid is just the first step in getting trained for the training. So since we got all that done, we became One Mind certified, and because we got it done within the time frame, which is we feel like it's important just because the number of mental health calls that we've been getting, it just only goes up. It went up a lot this year, especially with COVID, I think, because people were home and it did go up. We started keeping track. We did a different call card through dispatch for a specific mental health call. So we can now run the numbers and find out how many calls we actually have taken. And since, what's the date that we started? Well, since back in 21 mental health calls since June to yesterday's, I ran the numbers to yesterday's date. So I don't know, I can't compare them to previous years, but I feel like it's a lot more since being as I work almost every day. Very fast, there's 121 different mental health calls that we've gone to. So and during those calls, our officers, most of the time I was looking through all the cards where officers are able to, speak to the person that needs help and the situation, and they either agree to go up to the hospital to talk to someone, or through Seacoast, we have a call list. If they want to actually call Seacoast 24 hours a day, they can talk to someone on the phone from Seacoast. And then if they want them to go up and talk to someone at the hospital face to face, or if they can make an appointment for the next day to go in. That's a huge thing that we set up with Seacoast that we have available to us every day of the week, all night, 24 hours a day. we've used that. I tried to find out how many times we've actually used that, but but it has been used a bunch. And that is always available to us to call into Seacoast and talk to someone. Most of the time when we call, the person we're talking to is already working at the hospital. So they're already awake, and if they need to go up personally talk to them, they can. So that's all I have. Anything? If you guys want me to touch on anything else.
I'm sure there's questions from the group. Does it make sense to ask questions right to you, or do you want Director Walker to speak as well, or what's going to make better for you? To get his approach, are you telling me, Chief, how you want to do it?
Yeah,
probably both of us. We both together.
He seems to be having continued problems with the connection. What it's come down to is we've estimated about 2 mental health calls a week. And unfortunately, in the past several months, we've had 2 completed suicides. We will absolutely say that the pandemic has caused an increase in our mental health responses for obvious reasons, job losses, the illness itself, and all those things that cause depression, and maybe there was an underlying factor there before, and this just made that dormancy come out. So another tool that came out of this collaboration is something called the Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale. And that is really something that Director Walker presented to us and said, hey, this is how my clinicians speak to each other. This is their rating tool, and it's being recognized across the country. And if your officers could speak kind of the same language, that will make things so much information flow easier, and give that person the best help that they can get. So that came out as well through Sergeant West and Dennis Walker. That's important to know. As a One Mind campaign agency, we're the first in New Hampshire to do that, to successfully complete that. So that speaks a lot to our people and to the commitment that we have. It's important for you all to know that too. So I will turn it over to Director Walker.
Very good. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Yeah, I feel like we've always had a connection with the Exeter Police because we're embedded. Seacoast Mental Health is embedded inside the Exeter Hospital. So there is always, I think, a level of cooperation and collaboration. But I think this past year, with the One Mind campaign that the police force have, been pursuing, we've completely stepped that up. I had forgotten that the Exeter Police are the only One Mind certified in the state. And I also believe that I don't think any other police force is trained in the Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale as well. It's a very, very important scale. It's a brief, evidence-based suicide scale that allows anybody really to make a quick decision. What I was most impressed by is that Chief Poulin allowed me to come in and do training, and then taking it to the next step in terms of incorporating it into the policies was just very impressive. I was actually in an operations meeting this afternoon at Seacoast, and one of the things we were talking about is, in this day and age where mental health is at the forefront, no other police force in our catchment area, which is the eastern half of Rockingham County, has reached out to us. So it's the fact that Exeter Police became One Mind certified and also allowed me to come in and do the Columbia training. I think it's exceptional. The chief was speaking about the Columbia in terms of incorporating some of the same language that my staff uses, which is absolutely essential. One of the things we we did in Exeter was we set out to train core physicians, the high school, the police, and then we even developed a new model inside the Exeter ED, all for the reason that Chief Poulin was talking about, which is for everybody to speak the same language. When you have a system where everybody is speaking the same language, then you just quicken care. And then when somebody is suicidal, you really need to move quickly, accurately, and get people to where they need to be. Not everybody needs to come to the emergency department. Some people can just come over to the center and talk to us. We're right next to the hospital, if you don't know that. And so it has just become super important to connect the systems inside Exeter. And I think other towns are starting to figure out the importance. I did a training about 2 months ago with the Raymond School Systems. So, more and more towns want to develop that network that we've already developed. So I think it's gonna save lives, and the Exeter police do deserve a lot of credit for that. I could speak to a lot of different issues. We'll probably turn it over for questions, but if you want to know a little bit about what might be happening in the state and how that will affect, Exeter and mental health in Exeter, I'd be glad to speak to that, or any other questions that people have.
Anyone have any questions before? I know I do, but Molly, I see your hand raised. Molly Cowan?
Hi, yes, I do. Either Dennis or the chief or Devin, whoever is most qualified to talk about it, can you just tell us what is involved in the One Mind training?
Who would like to?
Do you want to handle that one, Chief?
I can. I mean, involved to get the training. I mean, the mental health first aid is a basic course that everybody takes. It's only 8 hours. It basically goes through how to respond to signs of mental illness, how to determine that the person is having a mental problem. It's just a basic 8 hour, like how to determine who has a mental illness, or if you're actually on a mental health call, because a lot of the times the calls come in and they don't come in as mental health. It comes in as something different. And you just have to determine on scene, is this a mental issue? Is this person having a mental health issue? So the mental health first aid is a basic 8 hour course that gets, so you can try to help better determine that. And then the crisis intervention training is it's a week long, more intense course of, you go through the mental health first aid stuff, but then you also learn techniques on how to handle it better, how to de-escalate the situation. You do role playing, so you can go through different scenarios in a classroom setting. And a lot of the people, I was in one of the classes, and a lot of people in those role playing, they have family members or they've had issues with mental health in the past. So they gave us a lot of tips on other things that if we did something wrong, you just did this wrong, but this is how you fix that. Every situation is obviously not the same, but so to get the mental health, everybody had to go through that, even dispatch, because they're the first line of communication. So they can help over the phone. They need to. And then I hope sometimes that might not be the case, but it's good to have someone that does have that CIT training to get on scene and help out. So I don't know. Hopefully I answered the question.
That's really helpful. And then my other questions are, how long has it been since you have implemented the training? And then what are the outcomes? Are you seeing a marked difference? Are the officers feeling more equipped? And this might be a more nuanced conversation that we have to wait to have until there's more, sort of both anecdotal and statistical evidence. And then my last question is, what is the plan to get everybody certified?
You mean like everybody to go through CIT?
Yeah.
I don't know if, Chief, do we have a plan to do everybody through CIT at some point?
We're going to certainly expand it, but to send, almost 30 people to a 40-hour long training is going to be quite intensive on our budget. But we're certainly going to expand that and have, like the sergeant said, at least one per shift, if not two per shift, that have that extensive CIT training. We also are fortunate enough to have several hostage negotiators that work here as part of the Seacoast Regional Emergency Response Team, and they have that extensive training as well. We can certainly utilize them in certain situations on how to speak to people and de-escalate. Again, what was the other question?
That was in the middle.
The other question was when. When did it happen? And then, what is the impact of having it on the department?
Okay, so this was something we pledged last year, shortly after I became sworn in to do, and we recently accomplished that and got that certification. I think it absolutely has been a success because the officers are using that severity scale, the Columbia scale, and they actually have people that after they talk to them, they voluntarily want to go and talk to a clinician. Or they seek that out. I think that's an absolute success when you hear stories like that. Whereas in the past, in how it's being done in some other agencies still is the officer would go up to the person, ask them if they want to hurt themselves. And if the answer is no, barring anything that's obvious, that's the extent of the help they give them. So we have a little bit more, we can kind of dig more into just, do you want to hurt yourself? We talk about, have you ever had a plan? Have you ever, what steps have you ever taken? Things like that. And it gives us a chance to ask more in-depth questions.
The biggest thing about that Columbia scale is, I personally did it on scene once with a person that was having suicidal thoughts. The stuff she told me on scene, she was very honest with me. Straight up told me she had a plan, how she would do it, all that stuff. Got her up to the hospital, and I was able to pass that along, what she scored on that scale, to the charge nurse and to everybody at the hospital, so they knew. And then she gave them a whole different story when she was at the hospital, and they were like, oh, and so they were able to help her because they had what she told me and how that scale worked. They called me up and they were like, well, how did she score on that? And I told them, and they were able to get her the help she needed. So that worked out a lot better than if we didn't have that.
Yeah, that's a great example. And there's been so many stories like that now where, when you just ask the evidence-based questions and not that kind of blanket statement that most people ask, but you ask the questions on the scale, it's super easy to use and anybody can give it. And you really get the sense from what the research tells us about when to be concerned or not. And you can see how when these systems speak the same language, now that the police is, using the Columbia, it's going to save lives. It already has.
I see a question from Katie Adams.
Yes, I have a million questions. This is really fascinating. I'll limit it. One of my questions is the One Mind certification. Who came up with those parameters? Was that other police departments nationally? Was it mental health professionals? Collaboration between them? And then also, does it come with it any kind of every year, every few years, any kind of updating? Because of course, there's all kinds of underlying issues that can be part of a mental health crisis, be it domestic abuse or custody or issues of race or issues of sexuality. And perhaps there could be new research that could, help update practices. So I'm just wondering if there's any kind of ongoing part of it. And then the third would be just what surprised you most to learn when you went through that training?
Okay, I can answer some of that.
I can too.
So this comes out of the International Association of Chiefs of Police. That's where the One Mind campaign comes from. And what it does, it also asks the agencies to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Seacoast. Well, for us, it was Seacoast Mental Health, but with an organization that deals in mental health response and awareness. It also asks for a constant reevaluation of your program, of the training. As we have people retire or we have new people come on, we have to continually maintain that training, the 100%, the 20%. So that's going to be ongoing. And it also speaks to policy enhancement, which we redrafted our mental health response policy to include the Columbia Severity Rating Scale, to include our partnership with Seacoast Mental Health, and to include the mandatory trainings and things like that. So constant review and making sure we stay up to date on everything.
Did you want to speak to that as well, Sergeant West?
Yeah.
The last part. Go ahead.
The people that came up with it, you first asked, it's the International Association of Chiefs of Police. They're the ones that came up with it, and that way it's able to go, across the country. You can go on their website in every state. It'll tell you who's taken the pledge and who's working on it, who's actually done it. And like the chief said, we're the first ones in the state to complete it. There's a few other people that have done it, but I'm hoping that now that we completed it and did the press release and let everybody know about it, other agencies will get on it and have to do it. So I'm hoping that happens. I don't know if it has yet, but and then you asked, going through the class and stuff. The big thing that got me was just how many people have a mental illness and the different signs of mental illness. You might not even notice some of the stuff, and then just being able to talk to them and de-escalate a lot of the situations and get them the help they needed is just a great thing to be able to accomplish.
Yeah, as the chief indicated too, the MOU that was signed between Seacoast and Exeter calls for that ongoing training, and we can just use our imagination as far as and look at trends and create trainings based on all the things that were mentioned here today.
Does anyone else have any? I don't see any other hands raised. It doesn't necessarily. Darius?
So this is wonderful, and I'm glad that we are, we're proactive and the first in the state. That's great. Has this, I'm asking, I guess, Sergeant West, has this provided you additional tools to use when going into a situation where someone may be having a psychotic episode, that you might handle it now differently than you did previously or prior to having this training and this certification? Has that something that you have experience with, or that you can provide an example with, and how this has helped to help someone that might be having that episode in terms of how it's been handled in the past to how it's being handled going forward?
Yeah, I mean, it has helped. We get a lot of calls, so it's can't get them down specifics, but I can already talk about that last time when I used that Columbia scale with that female. I was able to actually sit down and talk to her, and she was calmed down, got her to answer all the questions that I asked. I was actually, to be honest, I was more shocked that she answered them, how honest she was with me. I felt like just talking to someone that I'd known for years and I'd never met her before. So it helped me do that. I mean, and she was, I think because of all the different trainings and the way that I approached in there, and she didn't like me and I didn't do the right things, she probably wouldn't have told the answers I needed to get her the help that she needed. I've also seen it in some of our officers that have been through the training. One of our officers, he's only been on maybe a year and a half, and I went on a call with him with a woman that had actually texted the suicide hotline. And the way he handled it for a newer officer, I was very impressed. And it got her, she went up to the hospital and got the help she needed. So I've seen it as well.
And just as a follow-up on that, in the situations where you are not having a crisis call, but you're the potential going on a call and using some of those same skills is that transferable to other situations that may have been handled differently prior to the training of asking the questions that you're asking and the way in which you're asking them? Has that helped?
I think so. It helps you talk to people better too. I mean, even if they're not having a crisis, it's all the scenarios and the role plays and stuff that we did. It helps you learn how to talk to people even better than, that's what part of our job. Every day we talk to people. So This helps take a different approach to the way, instead of just like, just actually listening and talking to people and trying to get them the help and everything that everybody needs.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope I got it.
2 parts is thank you and thank you.
Welcome.
So it almost sounds like, since it's relatively new, that it was either a combination of Molly's question and Katie's question, that in time we would get more data on this, on the whole program, and just you've given us some great examples. But then going forward, maybe a year from now or 6 months from now, we'd have even more. Again, I'm always the data person, that would basically help us determine, the successes. Clearly, it is a success. It's just we need to quantify it. And what came to mind for me was, wouldn't regionalization of this type of program be something that would kind of help everyone in terms of this type of thing? It's interesting to me that only Exeter has reached out to do it with the One Mind, but if we could get more of a regionalized push, and I'm not sure how we do that, just as a committee of one, or even as one department, or maybe Seacoast Mental Health can help with that. But it would seem to me it would be in the best interest of all the towns in the Seacoast to get on board with this program. That's just
I agree with that, Ann, and I think when I first met the Exeter Police, one of the things that we wanted to try to do, which I love the ambition of the Exeter Police, is to try to create a model for everybody else. And I think our collaboration, we can do that. We can, maybe I'll leverage my relationship with Chief Poulin to call some other chiefs to get me in. But I think the level of cooperation, as far as, the openness, has just been amazing. And if we can get more police departments on the Seacoast, at least on the eastern half of where our catchment area is, but everybody, and at the end of the day, I think it would be good for the whole state.
So it's kind of too bad we don't have Alexis on our call today, but yeah, that was my next question. How do we get it sort of in I hate the term legislative part, get that aspect going? I'll defer to Katie because I saw your hand raised. We've heard enough of me. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know the answer to that, but I was just wondering, in light of the training you went through and your experiences, putting it to use, is there anything that you wish that people in town knew when they were considering making one of these calls?
The only thing they're calling mostly, a lot of them are welfare checks because they're worried about someone that posted something on Facebook or texted them that they need help. But some of them are just someone that's acting unusual downtown or at a business or something. So they don't really, unless they've had advanced training to find out, this person's schizophrenic and they're hearing, then that's not really gonna, and even that's not gonna, we're gonna go into it thinking one thing and they could be wrong, and it'd be totally something different. So there's really not much. We're still gonna get the calls, but
So
go to the chief, and then I'll go to
how we
Jessica, chief, and then Jessica after the sergeant.
those are good questions. Obviously, when police are called to these situations, it's gone out of hand, right? Maybe the family member or other household member has dealt with this And now it's come to the point where they can no longer deal with it and they have nowhere to turn to. So they call the police to come. And that's the calls we're going to is somebody's destroying property. Maybe somebody's assaulted somebody in the household. But it's gotten to that tipping point, right? So that's when people call the police. To educate them or to give them more resources prior to getting to that point takes all of us, right? Community involvement. If you know somebody that's going through that or has a family member going through something, talking with them about it, pointing them to the direction of Seacoast or to talk to somebody professionally about it before it gets to that tipping point. We can certainly talk about one of the large debates right now is, should police be responding to these type of calls? Are police equipped to be doing so? Is it in their job description to be doing so? You're seeing things in the larger cities with larger PDs actually have these teams that's all they do all shift is go to these crisis calls. And they all have advanced training in it. And they're the ones that are dealing with this day in, day out. They actually build a rapport with some of these folks. But for most of the police departments in New Hampshire, we're just not that big to be able to justify that. But when we talk with Dennis Walker, we talk about maybe a regional task force like that. Those are things we should be, discussing in whatever stakeholders that is, if it's a sheriff's department or if it's a lot of the smaller Seacoast PDs get together and have this group that's available, would make more sense. They go to Hampton, they'll go to Stratham, they'll come to Exeter, that would make more sense to react that way. But I certainly don't disagree with the folks that say police should not be responding to these type of calls either, because I've seen those videos. I've seen how quickly it can go bad for the person that's suffering, whether it's the lack of training, whether it's a lack of education, or they go directly to a use of force, a deadly force, and we see the outcome there. So.
I'm going to go to Jessica and then Matt.
So I'm the dispatch supervisor here. I think the biggest thing for the public to know in terms of this is when we get these calls, dispatch, we'll ask a lot of questions. I don't think people realize some of the tools that we have and that the department-wide training went to was giving us questions to ask you in order to determine that this could be a mental health call and how we approach it. So if you're calling in with something like this and we're asking about everything from mental health history to what's going on right now, it's more so we're giving units tools to know what they're heading into and to better help the people they're responding to. So that's our biggest obstacle for us sometimes is they feel like some of our questions might be invasive, or are we questioning their legitimacy? And in reality, we're just trying to make sure that we're approaching this the right way and with the right amount of sensitivity. And, it changes the dynamic a little bit when we know it's a mental health call.
Matt, you had your hand up and then.
Chief and Sergeant West, congratulations. I mean, that's great stuff, being at the tip of the spear and being proactive and stuff like this. It's been a tough year for everybody, and I'm sure you guys are having a positive impact on people in town that really aren't being noticed or are in that type of crisis. And like you said, you don't get to choose what calls you go on. When they call the police department or they call 911, it's usually gotten to a critical point of destruction of property or welfare checks. And to your credit, you guys are coming up with positive, proactive solutions to things that are normally not necessarily at the top of a law enforcement officer's responsibilities. Just to take Katie's question, I think, one step further, and I know the International Chiefs of Police is a pretty broad umbrella. Most, if not all, police departments have a chief, and they're all participants of that organization. So that's a good place to start. But to take it more locally, are you advocating, Chief, with others in Rockingham County or in the state? Have you talked to Director Skipper at police standards and training, just to let them know what you guys are doing and seeing if they want to duplicate it at a state level. I mean, I realize this board and you as a chief are responsible for this town, but I also know we have friends and responsibilities, and it's such a small state that your influence can go further here than anywhere. Have you brought Director Skipper in on what you guys are doing?
I'll say we're very fortunate to have Director Skipper in the position that he's in now. He's very forward-thinking and open-minded to these type of issues. I know that the curriculum at the Police Standards and Training has increased regarding mental health training and so forth. And probably some of our newer officers can speak to that. So I know he's open to that, and I know he has a lot on his plate right now, as you can imagine. And absolutely.
Do you guys have a working group with, I know that certain agencies are actually on the Police Standards and Training Council. So that's not every chief in the state. But do you guys have some type of working group where you do work with them or meet with them quarterly or every 6 months to give them feedback of what you're doing and what's working for your community that could work in others?
So as a chief in New Hampshire, we are part of the New Hampshire Chiefs Association. And actually we had a meeting this morning, and Director Skipper is directly involved with those meetings.
Well, thanks for advocating to others things that are working here. And as you know, when things are going really well, that's the best thing to share up. And I know Chief Skipper, who lives in town, or Director Skipper, who lives in town, has a vested interest here as a resident as well. And, his work experience in Northampton and Stratham, I mean, he is glue that holds a lot of the Seacoast together. He's got the confidence and respect of both citizens and peers. So the Seacoast, for Dennis's reference, you have a lot of influence right now in law enforcement training, and they're right here. They're right next to us. They're next to a neighbor. They're your friends. And I'm really impressed that you got to reach out to other chiefs. And, I would also suggest that maybe you reach out to Police Standards and Training and let them know what's working here so that others can duplicate it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's really good feedback. Jessica, is your hand still raised? No, okay. This is a great collaboration of minds here. I would say, really, I'm pretty impressed myself. Go ahead, Darius.
Two things. One, we're just a time check. We're at 3:48.
Yeah, I'm watching.
The other question is just to the chief: are we working with the county sheriffs, the Rockingham County sheriffs, let them know the same of this type of training of the One Mind program? Are the county sheriffs aware of this, the success that we've had here? And if so, then can that be extrapolated to other counties within the state as well, as chief of police are being made aware of the One Mind program? So
I can't speak to who's aware of this and who's not outside of, my scope of influence. I found out about it rather easily. We had a newspaper article on our achievements. We posted on social media. I think different organizations talk about the need for having a quality mental health response, especially now more than ever. So if people are unaware that this is something they should be looking into, I don't think there's an excuse for that. So I would hope that most of them are working towards it, or looking into it. And if anyone obviously has any questions about the process, I welcome them to reach out to me or to Sergeant West, or ask any of the staff, the dispatchers, and we can have that communication.
Thank you.
And Katie, you also have your hand raised?
Yeah, just as we near the end of this conversation, I was going to ask Dennis if you wouldn't mind sharing a phone number that if anyone's watching that they could call if they were thinking maybe they'd like to talk to someone.
Sure, yeah, thank you. It's 603-772-2682. 2710. And that's 24/7. You can reach us. You can reach if you're in a mental health crisis, you can reach a master's level clinician. We can do a whole bunch of stuff from, crisis assessment to intervention to stabilization. There's a lot of things we can do. We want people to know that they're never alone. They can always reach us holidays, Christmas Day, July 4th, any day. We're always here for you. And, we have the Exeter Hospital, obviously, right in our backyard. So, there's our affiliation with them just allows us to keep people safe for a while. They need to, if we need to find them an inpatient hospital, we can do it from the safety of Exeter Hospital. They don't have inpatient psychiatric services there, but we can keep people safe until we find a bed. Or we can even begin treatment inside the emergency department. We have psychiatric professionals at our disposal inside the emergency department. So many things we can do for people we want them to know, just a phone call away.
And not to sound like a commercial, but the number again was
603-772-2710. It's Seacoast Mental Health.
603-772-2710.
2710.
2710. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Do we have any other questions from any other committee members for Mr. Walker or the chief or Sergeant West?
Does anyone have any other suggestions of something, that we can add to? Has anyone heard anything that maybe we can talk about? Because that's part of this committee, right? It's to kind of to advise us on what we could do better, what we could do differently. So if any of you all have any kind of suggestions or have heard anything, you can bring them up now, or you can send me an email, or talk with me about it. We're very open to anything.
Yeah, that's well taken, because mental health is, especially the mental health topic. I mean, I think the chief means that comment in general, but I think our mental health is really something that everyone is looking into. So any and all feedback that can be gotten, is anonymous, whatever. It's really important. It's an important part of the mission of this committee. Yes, Katie, your hand is raised. Right?
I think Daryl's was up before mine.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Chief,
I do both. I look at your hand and I also look at my little chart. Sorry. Go ahead, Daryl.
Chief, would it be useful for some of the officers who are trained in this to share it with the public, either on Exeter TV as a PSA or in some other informal way?
Yes, I think it would. Our dispatchers as well, because like the supervisor alluded to, some of the information they're gathering on the phone, whether it may seem innocuous, such as maybe the person is sweating, or maybe the person has removed their shirt and it's temperatures like what we have right now outside, those are kind of indicators that there's something more going on. So in the faster they can relay that information to the responding officer, the better. So sure, that is something we could do with Exeter TV.
Okay.
Yeah, this is probably a stretch because many people feel very private about this, but if you ever find that you've worked with someone and helped them through a crisis and they at some point in the future feel comfortable talking about it, this would be a great thing to see in the paper, would be if that person would be interviewed whatever officer helped them, even if it's 2 years later, just to kind of demystify the process for people to hear it from that side of it. If that ever came up, that would probably be effective.
Yeah, and for my own personal thing, I was really glad to hear from the dispatch, because that's been the thing that I've kept in the back of my mind is who gets that first call. And I didn't ask for Jessica to speak, but I'm really glad that you did, because to me, that's the, I'll say, scariest call to get as you determine what exactly is going on. And you are well trained, and because of what's gone on with the One Mind, now I would guess the dispatchers would feel a lot more confident knowing, okay, if I get something that starts to sound like X, here's my list of things to start asking before I send an officer out there. So, I mean, to me, that first line is really, really critical. And that goes for all the dispatchers across the state, I would think. So part of me wonders why this whole One Mind thing isn't required. It's great for us to have our chief talk to others about it, but I mean, somewhere higher up, somebody should be saying, all police departments should have XYZ. Matt, and then we'll round this up. Go ahead, Matt.
Chief, I don't know if this is for you or for Dennis over at Seacoast Mental Health, but what happens on the intersection of HIPAA requirements and law enforcement documentation? Can either of you guys speak on, I understand Katie's question about sharing it with the public, but I mean, I know from my past experience with anybody with a health-related condition, and I mean, it would clearly have to be voluntary if somebody comes forward, but it just brought up the question in my mind of how are you guys separating HIPAA-related stuff from public information? Can the chief or Dennis talk about it?
Are you referring to, like, if we were ever going to get somebody to kind of help who was formerly in crisis and who wanted to talk about it openly? Or are you referring to if, for example, Seacoast got a crisis call and we needed to involve the police, how that, and we had some protected information, how that we would convey that without violating HIPAA?
Well, I mean, it's there, and it's, I know you guys are aware of it. I just want the board to be aware of it, and I'm aware of it. Obviously, they're responding to a 911 call or a 772-1212 call. It's going to be documented. But, you bring up an interesting point. How would you guys call the police? But, I mean, you don't have to go into great detail, but mention the HIPAA part of it so the rest of the board understands what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, one of the great benefits of seeing a medical professional or a psychiatric professional is the things that you say to that person remain confidential and protected. And, there's laws governing that. They're the HIPAA laws. Fundamentally, where they can go out the window, though, is when somebody is talking about hurting themselves or hurting others. We can share anything in that context, say with the police or from professional to professional, in a way in which we can protect that individual. So there's a lot more leeway in emergency psychiatry than there would be in non-emergency, where it's really a steel trap, right, to protect people as it should be from leaking information. But in a psychiatric crisis, we have a lot of leeway to share information with the police to protect the individual, but also in many ways to protect the police as well.
But I appreciate you saying that and bringing it forward. Some of the other things that board members may not understand is there could be positive outcomes after these interdictions, and we're not going to know about it. The police department's not going to know about it, and they probably shouldn't know about it because of HIPAA, correct?
Right. I mean, once we have done what we needed to do to secure the person, maybe bring them over to the emergency department, then that's where the steel trap happens at that point. There's no, leaking out that information to the public, or we even have limitations on what we can share with the family at that point. That's how aggressive the HIPAA law is.
So that said, I mean, to get feedback data points beyond passing the ball, I mean, it's a beautiful pass of the ball from a law enforcement agency to a healthcare agency. That's a success. And that's where I would measure success. And anything from that point forward is really someone's personal health and confidential and protected under HIPAA. They're in the right hands once they get to Seacoast Mental Health, correct?
Exactly. We wouldn't, you know, we wouldn't even reach back around to the police and update them on the person's condition or anything like that. Once we have them and are evaluating them, they have all the HIPAA protection rights from there. There's no, you know.
So as a board and the police department in general, to measure success, just that Passover is the success. That's how I see it. Is that how the chief and you see it?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we're just at about 4:00, so that's, unless there has anything else, I cannot thank you enough, Director Walker, and also Sergeant West, the chief, and everybody on this board. I think we had a really informative session here today. And I'm sure if there's any follow-up questions, anyone thinks of anything, I'm sure we can reach out to Dennis and to the chief for anything that comes up. And this won't be the last we see of you. I'm sure a lot of what we discuss in these meetings, I'm sure we'll have you come back or give us some more information. But
I would love to come back. I live in Exeter. I love living in Exeter. So anything you guys ever need, feel free to call me right back.
Have you taken our survey yet?
I haven't. I admit that I haven't, but my wife has. So
okay. Send it out to all your friends and family.
Will do.
All right. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it all.
All right.
So unless, I was just going to really quickly finish up. I have no correspondence. I have not received any correspondence this week. And other than that, I would look for a motion to adjourn, and we'll be back in on February 23rd. Emily?
So moved.
All those in favor, I'll take a roll call vote.
Who made the motion?
Emily made the motion.
Emily.
And who seconded?
I'll second.
Okay.
I misheard it. I'm sorry. I misheard it. I thought Emily was seconding it, so I missed the beginning.
Emily.
Thank you.
All right, because it's important for Matt because he's our secretary today. We got to get it right on the motions. Okay. Okay. Elliot?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Katie?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
Darius?
Yeah, aye.
Tanisha?
Aye.
And Harry?
Is Harry here?
Yeah, he did. He appeared in the middle of the... Can you hear me, Harry? I just wanted to know if you were voting on adjourning the meeting. I'm not sure if he can hear me. I can see him. I don't think he can hear me.
Looks like it's frozen.
Maybe frozen.
No.
Okay.
You're muted, Harry.
He's muted. Well, that's all right. And for the record, I say aye. I think we can adjourn. I think we're good.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Did you hear me, Harry?